I turn to the outdoors during these times, but I'm also drawn more and more to pornography and alcohol. What advice do you have to lessen my consumption of these? It's not an addiction, but it may be becoming a habit. I don't like it, but oddly hard to stop. These activities seem to creep up. That's a terrifically worded question as well, and I appreciate your distinction between addiction and habit. Habits are things we should all enable ourselves to form when they are good and to try to stop when they are bad, but at what point do they become addictions? You had something.
Well, I would say one thing that, we talked a little bit about addiction and our broken model of it on a past live stream.
Yeah.
One thing is better options are the key to avoiding addiction. All right. So to the extent that you have more entertaining things to do, you will tend not to default to the stuff that you feel is destructive. In the case of porn, it's probably, you don't say enough about what your relationship status is to know, but to the extent that it scratches an itch that if you had to work harder by interacting with people to scratch the same itch, you would end up more rewarded because you would be interacting with them in a way that had a proper challenge to it and all.
During lockdown, if you don't have a relationship, it might be very hard to know how to proceed.
Yeah.
Right?
I think the thing, I don't know if I've said this anywhere yet, but the thing about porn is that it gets in the way. It is a consumer solution to a ability to generate fantasy internally. And so at some level, you're denying yourself something and exposing yourself to the hazard of what the market wants you to be fantasizing about. And you'd be far better off to just say, this is blocking a cognitively productive activity. I know it's a weird thing to say about it.
But you're making an argument that sounds superficially similar to a familiar argument, but it's actually quite different. So the argument that many people will have heard a lot of places is that you end up seeing this sort of menu of options that are actually mostly not, at least for women, what women want to be engaging in, but this is now what's in men's heads, for instance, about what it is that they think good sexual activity looks like. And you are saying not just does it put these wrong things on a menu, but it actually having a menu at all, being handed a menu, makes it less easy for you to create your own sexual life and explore whatever your own sexual fantasies might be, such that you actually may live an impoverished, a sexually impoverished fantasy and actual sexual life forever after, because you thought from the beginning that it was about a menu, that it was about someone handing you something, that sexuality was about market forces, that narrative was about market forces in the case of a slightly related concept. And I think that's apt.
I think it's good. I want to add two things to it. One, you had an excellent piece come out in Aereo magazine this week on pornography, and
well, it's also about lizards.
And about lizards. Sure. Of course, the two things like hand in glove. Yeah. But
so sex, love, and sexual autism in Aereo. Yep.
The other thing that I would say is, if we're comparing your internally generated sexual fantasy with porn, right? Here's something we can say for sure. Porn is a market phenomenon. As a market phenomenon, different producers are driven to compete with each other in a market saturated with stuff. Are they delivering the ideal thing? They can't, because if they deliver the ideal thing, what separates them from everybody else? So what they're delivering is an increasingly extreme view of sex and sexuality. In order to get attention, you have to push the envelope in order to stand out. Mm-hmm. And so what we know is that porn has pushed the envelope way the hell out into crazy directions that you wouldn't think to desire if they weren't being pushed at you as normal. And so the question is, do you want to open your sexual life to this market force that pushes in the direction of extreme, or would you rather figure out what you actually want? Right? These are two very different views. And basically, I think porn's hurting you. So stop it, right? The endogenously generated stuff is natural, and therefore your tendency towards this, that, or the other is much more likely to be healthy for you.
So I agree with you, but alcohol is also hurting you. We both drink alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
We both are probably drinking more alcohol than is optimal for us. Probably any alcohol.
Well,
is
in
more
our
than is-
defense, it is 2020.
Well, but this is the question,
Yeah.
right? And just to read it again, I think this is where we're going to stop. And but I turn to the outdoors. I imagine this is a man. He says, during these times, but I'm also drawn more and more to pornography and alcohol. What advice do you have to lessen my consumption of these? We've already spent time talking about porn, but with regard to alcohol, he says it's not an addiction, but it may be becoming a habit. I don't like it, but it's oddly hard to stop. These activities seem to creep up. I feel very much this way about alcohol, actually. And the fact that the person asking the question begins with "I turn to the outdoors," I am feeling the end of summer coming, and I was lucky enough to be able to have the time to get up early this morning and strap a paddleboard on the top of the car and go out to the Willamette and spend an hour on the water. That changed my outlook on the day until I got back on the internet. Right? But certainly, if you can do that. Not that particularly necessarily, but there were already. It was pretty early, and there were already so many people out there, families with kids, fishermen, people in kayaks. Not too many at that time. People with jet skis and such. And it really is healing. But also figure out what else you do to feel your best and most complete self. Do you create? Do you discover? Do you heal other people? What is it that is your truest and best self? And can you either do more of that or expand your ability to do it? Hone your skills. So, and it became a trope early in COVID lockdowns that everyone was baking sourdough bread. And because of your gluten sensitivity, that's not something that I ended up doing. I probably would have if we had all been able to eat sourdough bread. But if you live with other people and enjoy making things for them, cooking for and with other people, making art, writing words and sharing them with other people, making things out of wood if you have access to it, wood or metal or anything. Just there are so many ways I think that you can expand what it is that you are finding value in, and it probably won't completely replace alcohol and maybe not porn, although I would advocate that you should try to completely replace the porn, but it will probably lessen the pull on you. You will probably feel less the need at some point every day. Yeah, I could really go for a drink right now.
All right. 2 things to add.
Yeah.
One, I saw an interesting, where was it, Reddit or something, expose, or maybe it was the response to one of these Ask Reddit questions about the amount of exploitation of young people involved in the porn industry. So it's hurting people. Right. So the basic answer is, look, if it's hurting people, that's probably incentive enough not to participate, right? Because by consuming it, you are driving that harm to continue, and you have an alternative. On the other front, the alcohol front, it's great if you can take days off. Also, if you're not going to take days off, less is better. And here's a solution based on your scenario here. I can't drink beer anymore because of the gluten thing, but pint of cider or a pint of beer followed by a bike ride, it's really in some ways kind of ideal.
Maybe not in heavy traffic.
Right. Well, but you don't want to be biking in heavy traffic anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway, consider instead of having 2 or 3 pints, have 1 pint and go for a ride and see if it doesn't get you there with half the consumption.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also true for alcohol, like almost all drugs, that taking a break makes the effects when you go back to it more interesting and powerful anyway. So, it's been years since we've done this, but for many years, I started, and you decided to adopt as well, a habit of saying, okay, every month there's going to be at least 1 week with no alcohol at all, and no drinking more than, what was it, 2 days in a row or something, 2 days or 3 days in a row. I don't remember exactly what the rules were, but it keeps you honest, and it also means that when you go back to it, you actually feel it more and you enjoy it more. And what are you doing it? If you're only doing it to numb the pain, then there are bigger issues, and hopefully, for someone in enough control to write this question, there are some better ways to find to get rid of some of the pain.
Yep. Think of it as tantric drinking.
Okay.
All right. I think with that, we have reached the end of the Q&A section.
We've reached the end of something.
Yep.